I applied to the Ferrera Fellowship because freshman year I saw this nonprofit. I've always been very interested in the nonprofit world, the nonprofit community, but I haven't had much experience with it. So freshman year I saw the Ferrera Fellowship in an ad or in an email, and I was really, really interested, and I went to this. I thought it was an information session, but it turned out to be a presentation of the Ferrera Fellows from last year. So I sat through, I listened to it, and I was really inspired by the work that they did. One girl, her name was Kyla, and she orchestrated nurses and their schedules and all this stuff she had not no business doing, but she was it was way over her head. And I thought that was awesome and a great challenge. And I was a little disappointed because I couldn't sign up, so I waited. And then this past year, I saw the email again, and I just thought to my head, I was like, this is exactly the same thing as a couple years ago. So it just worked perfectly, and I applied for it. And I didn't really expect to get it or really have the opportunity to, but I think my passion showed through. I selected St. Francis House because I've always wanted to work with the homeless. I came home from high school one day with my mom in senior year, and I went to theology class, and I thought that my calling was to create a homeless shelter. And I came home and I told my mom, I'm going to go nonprofit, and she goes, absolutely not. And both my parents are engineers. You can't blame them. They go 9 to 5, sit at a desk, and I just have a very different philosophy, and it's always been a challenge. So I was really excited for this opportunity to work with a nonprofit, to also work with the homeless, because I've always wanted to work with the homeless because I just have such a passion that I don't think that people should be homeless. And I understand now especially why people are homeless, and it's a really, really big, glaring issue in our society, and it's just there's not enough housing and there's so many issues. So I've always wanted to work with the homeless, and St. Francis House was the perfect place for me. So I was in the development office, and I oversaw the print newsletter that's sent out once a year in the winter to help. It raises over $150,000 for St. Francis House every year. And then they don't have an annual report. So I was charged with creating an inaugural annual report for St. Francis House. I had to research what nonprofit annual reports look like, and how exactly to make it, present to the Vice President of Philanthropy and External Affairs, and then create it. So it was a really great task. And I did a couple other, I uploaded past newsletters onto the website. I helped with volunteer appreciation tweets, and I had a couple other projects here and there throughout my fellowship, and I was directly supervised by Christina Smith, who's the Marketing and Communications Director. This fellowship turned out to be a lot more marketing than I originally anticipated. So actually, I took a class last semester called Marketing for Nonprofits, taught by Laurel Steinfeld, and it was a really challenging class, but I learned a lot about how nonprofits work, so I had a lot greater understanding for it, and I understand that they have a lot less manpower than other for-profit organizations, and so they don't have enough resources, and the fact that St. Francis House did not have an annual report was a huge issue, and the reason why was just everyone else is swamped. So it was really awesome for me to be able to come in and know a little bit more about marketing because of my class, and then to be able to help them in ways that they couldn't without an additional resource. I think my biggest challenge was getting accustomed to the culture and how to work in a development office and work in the environment with all these wonderful people that I didn't know, and then oversee a project that I didn't really know much about and has been around for years and years and years, and then to expect to get materials from the director of the annual fund and from the events coordinator and all these people who have been there for years, and I come in and don't really know much about the newsletter or even St. Francis House comparatively, and I have to oversee them, be a project management of the pieces, the writer, be the direct communication with the writer and the guests that she interviews, scheduling for the CEO. I had to schedule a meeting for her and connect with certain people, and I think that's been the biggest challenge, as well as taking on this new project of the annual report that I didn't know anything about, didn't know what it was supposed to be, what it was supposed to look like, doing a ton of research that I didn't really expect either, and then compiling it into a easy handout to present to my supervisors. they were over the moon. They were so excited about my presentation. When I presented, first of all, they loved it. They thought that I presented really well. And on 3 separate occasions afterwards, the Vice President of Philanthropy and External Affairs, her name's Maggie Burns, and she just complimented me on how I presented. She thought that I handled objections really well, how I was very composed. I think I've grown tremendously from this experience. I think I've grown up a lot. I'm gaining a ton of marketing experience that I really didn't expect, but I'm really lucky to have. And being supervised by different people who think differently is really interesting. So my direct supervisor is wonderful, a great mentor, a great person to be in direct contact with, but we don't think the same on a lot of things. But it's really interesting because then I'll think very similar to her supervisor. And so it's like handling objections and taking constructive criticism. It's made me a lot more mature person, and also has given me a lot of more insight into the world of nonprofits if I choose to pursue that. In the future, I hope to be making a difference with whatever I choose to do, and I hope that this experience will help me to, as I grow and do more, experience more opportunities, that I'll always be able to come back to this and say, this is kind of a starting point of what I've been able to make an impact for, and kind of a starting point to the world of nonprofits or the world of helping other people. And I really hope that all the experience and knowledge that I've gained, I can use that and transfer that to the next opportunity that I have, and always be able to touch back and come back to it. And additionally, it's really touched me and opened my perspective to the harshness and the poverty of the world. I think that as a person, it's helped me grow, but also I feel as though it's been such an eye-opening experience that I can hopefully use my changed perspective to help other people. I would love to thank the Professor Ferrera, first of all, for being a great mentor and for the creation of the fellowship. And I also would love to thank the Ferrera Fellowship Committee, because, they gave me the opportunity as a rising junior to work for San Francis House and have this awesome opportunity, and then bring my experience back to the Bentley community.